Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Janue Johnson. I probably won't talk as much considering my voice is a little raspy, but it's such a pleasure to be here and to be here with Nashona and Rania. I wanted to do two things before I started. Just wanted to share our PowerPoint, but before I do, I would love for you all to just access a document that I'm putting into the chat. It'll serve as our collaborative way to interact during the session because we are remote and virtual. It may be difficult for that, for us to capture all of your thoughts, but through this document, we are able to do that. So I'll just share just to show it with you for a second. So if you're able to, so just sorry, I'm trying to, you think you know how to use Zoom and then this happens. But if you notice on the document, it just has some resources, some information, and then it has spaces for you all to create and add your insight into the document. And so we would use it as a tool, not only for us to engage with you, but also for you and to engage with one another. So that's why we created it. So we hope that you can add your insight and share with us some of the things that you think. So I want to just share our slides really quickly. So again, this is challenges in facilitating and developing diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racist programming. My name is Janue, Nashona, and Rania. I'll let them also introduce themselves, but they're amazing women. I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to do this. Of course, we also want to just acknowledge these mutual agreements that, that we'll respect each other, that we'll listen with open hearts and minds, that we are using this space to find ways to integrate ideas into our professional practice. And, what we don't know, but we're all here to learn from each other, and that we assume the best intentions. So I put that document in the chat, but this is also a short link to access it. And it's case sensitive. So it would just be exactly input to your browser that way for you to access it another way. The takeaways, so we want to keep it short and to the point, but we want to be able to discuss. So we just want to talk about what are some of your challenges with DEIA programming, why equity, and we've heard some of that amazing content from the Chancellor's Office presentation. And then what are some ways that to support equity-focused professional learning is a term that I use at my campus, or professional development at your campus. So this is the part that I was really excited to share. Sorry, this is a quote from Bell Hooks, and Bell Hooks recently transitioned, but if you look up her, if you Google her, she had a book called Teaching to Transgress, and the first chapter was called Engage Pedagogy. And so here she just describes the process of self-actualization. And so while, we may have, I know we've heard of Maslow, but for me, when I read that, I connected with what she was saying, because in the chapter, she elaborates on this idea about equity being a journey that we not only empower ourselves, that we learn how to deconstruct and reconstruct our views, and then we begin to also impart that affirmation and that validation towards our students by honoring them as whole people who also can contribute to the learning experience collectively. And so when we talk about equity, oftentimes, it seems like an outside thing, but to me, what I've come to understand is an internal lens that we begin to possess, where we have empathy, not only for others, but for ourselves. And through that practice, we begin to be able to connect in ways that allowed us to live fully and deeply, as Bell Hooks has said. So I just wanted to just share that this from my learning, because she's deeply affected me by her work. And if you're familiar with her, I would love to, if you all want to put something in the document or in the chat, but this is just, we just wanted to open up with that. And so I look forward to getting to know many of you, and I'll just go on to the next slide. So I would just open it up for Nashona and Rania to share.
Thank you, Janue. And I feel so bad with your voice the way that it is, saying, Janue, why don't we jump in and you know, get us started. So I hope that when Rania and I share, it gives you some time to get something to drink and manage your voice. We do take care of each other on this board. So I just want to put that out there. But I'm really excited about the information that we came across this morning. I'm Nashona, PD specialist. I work again at Grossmont-Cuyamaca Community College District. I work in the HR department, so my role is a little bit unique in that I'm not only with faculty or not only with classified professionals or not only with administrators, but I get to work with students and everyone. And because my position is housed in the HR department, which is often looked at as like the principal's office, we are in the great position of seeing some of the challenges that come in to our district about just the different ways that we need to approach our work based on our local, you know, employee community and the community of students that we serve. And so there's a lot of DEI opportunities for us to grow. But I think before we get into the challenges, I just wanted to highlight what my position is, because I'm a talker and I can really just get into this work, and I don't want to be disrespectful to Rania. So I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself, and then together the three of us will talk to you about some of the challenges that we experience within our districts and rolling out some DEI work. Go ahead, Rania.
Thanks, Nashona. I am so excited that we're bringing this presentation to you. The State Chancellor's Office representatives, Dr. Bull, Dr. Martinez, Dr. Williams, did such an amazing job reminding us, and we already, I think most of us know, equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism work is super implanted in our brains, and we live it every day. And we hear that we need to become anti-racist institutions. We need to dismantle the structures, decolonize things. And oftentimes as PD practitioners, that sounds wonderful in theory, but sometimes it becomes very difficult in practice as we put these workshops on. Telling someone to decolonize their curriculum is one thing, and then actually leading a workshop on equity practices, decolonization, and all of those other things that are so important to student equity and success is difficult. So that's really the purpose of this workshop. Again, I'm Rania Hamdy. I'm at San Bernardino Valley College, a college that's near and dear to my heart. I was a student there, and to come back full circle to the college that I attended is just amazing. And so my role is PD coordinator full-time there, and I'm so excited to be here with you all today. Janue, back to you.
Thank you. So I know that one of the things that Nashona wanted to definitely do was name it, right? So if it's okay, I wanted to just pull up the collaborative document just for us to see what we have in there so far. One second. I didn't get to look in the chat yet, but I want to, because I want to see what was shared so far.
A lot of excitement about the Bell Hooks book.
Oh, there's some stuff in here. Oh, good. And
yes.
there's some stuff in our document. I'm so excited. Let's see.
Thank you, everyone, for beginning to add to that so quickly. You know, the wonderful thing about PD practitioners that I learned early on is that we love sharing and we love connecting, and we are a beautiful collective community. So thank you. Right.
So we'll continue to use this document throughout our session. I think it's, again, a really helpful tool to keep us connected and then to document our ideas and continue to do the sharing that Rania mentioned we do so well as PD practitioners. But some of the challenges I think that we experience, and I hope that you all will drop some of the challenges that you experience in the chat, are that we just don't know where to start. So we feel overwhelmed with all of this data, all of this information that we have, and we don't know where to start. And sometimes we don't collect enough data locally, right, within our districts and in our campuses to figure out where the best place to start might be. So that's one of the challenges. And then the other big challenge is once you've identified where to start, who do you get to facilitate these sessions, right? There are so many subject matter experts. There are people who are really passionate about the work, but maybe aren't the best at facilitating. Sometimes the passion can get a little bit in the way of delivery and making sure that we're inclusive of everyone in the room, right? So we might have difficulty managing our biases. And then one of the greatest things that we talked about as a team, Rania and Janue and myself, is that if you're facilitating this work and you're not willing to be a part of the work and show up in an authentic space, then be prepared to turn everyone off, right? Because you showing up in that way is giving an invitation for other people to do the same thing. And so when we're not opening ourselves up to some of that dialogue and some of that process, then we're really just checking boxes and will likely end up in the same space that we are now. So those are some of the areas that I wanted to identify because I think facilitation and the proper selection of facilitation is really important. And then within that space, and this goes for all PD, it's not just necessarily focused on DEI work. How can you manage conflict on your feet within those sessions? Because you know they get heated. I think there are some folks who might attend the sessions well-intended, but are unpracticed in using the correct language and terminology. And so then there are microaggressions that just fall out of their mouths as soon as they're open. There are unmanaged biases, which then make it difficult for them to connect. So as a facilitator, if you're not prepared, to manage those conversations and redirect them and share with the audience the impact that those statements are making on folks in the group, then that could be a barrier to moving forward and really getting this DEI work off the ground. So those are just a couple of things that I feel like I've experienced a little bit as far as some of the challenges that we have in just getting our PD off the ground. So identifying, the data within our local districts, and then also identifying the folks who are not only passionate, but are skilled at facilitating uncomfortable conversations. Oh, I'm so sorry about the issues with my mic this morning. Let's see.
Nashona, while you're doing that, I just want to talk a little bit about what it means to show up authentically in this space, and then we'll move on to some other slides. But I think Dr. Martinez did a great job modeling that for us this morning, especially when we're leading vulnerable work like equity and DEI conversations. Embracing all of the intersectionalities that we have, talking about, who we are, where we came from, what equity means to us, really allows us to bring down some walls and really helps other folks that may need to share or may feel defensive in the space, bring down their walls as well, right? Because we as humans just really want to connect with each other on a human level. And so when we hear about someone's background, someone's reasons for coming to DEI work, or someone's hesitations, and where those intersectionalities come together, it can be a really powerful way to start off any dialogue. And again, I think Dr. Martinez did an amazing job of introducing herself and all her intersectionalities as she presented with us this morning.
Thank you. What I would like to do is also open it up for the people that are here with us in the Zoom. I know that we were using the document, and I just wanted to just take a moment to just acknowledge some of the things that I noticed on there. Getting more than the usual suspects. Someone said buy-in from faculty and staff that hear the words anti-racist. And then another one, having repeat customers, advocating for classified, technical admin challenges with the VRC and buy-in from, there's so many things on here that I can relate to. I think that we all can relate to. And I would just like, before we go on to the next one, just if there is someone who would like to just share, maybe could use the raise your hand feature. No, one. That's okay. I just wanted to just make sure that we also open the space. If there is something that I could share as far as a challenge, I would say one of the challenges that I've experienced is the buy-in. But because at my institution, the president made a very strong push towards equity. It was in the mission statement, and then it took some time because in a bureaucratic structure, right, in the system, there's challenges with having a program, having initiatives, how that's funded, and then you have the culture of the institution within that dynamic that can impact how it is moved forward, especially if you don't have buy-in. So one of the things that I noticed was I had to learn how to network within my campus to leverage some of those usual suspects, right? Then to become the experts to lead the discussions because they were respected by their colleagues. So that was just one thing that I've learned. And sometimes you do have to get external people, but that was one challenge that I've had. It's not perfect, but it's definitely seemed to be one way that we could address where those people who were, stronger in their understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of instruction could become coaches, for other faculty.
Anything else anyone want to share about some of the challenges? I know you're using the document. We're excited about that. We weren't sure whether or not folks would use it. So thank you for that. Anything else anyone's willing to unmute and share as far as challenges are concerned? I'm still scratchy and I don't know how to fix it. I wish I could say that there was something wrong with my throat, but it's my speaker and I can't fix it.
It's okay. We'll bring the document back up, the PowerPoint, and begin to go through that. And while Janae's doing that, I'll just say also, it is difficult when you have such strong words like anti-racism, and sometimes people, and Dr. Martinez mentioned this as well, they're not sure how to come to that space. So a recommendation as well is, of course, you're going to have those experts, and then those experts sometimes draw the usual suspects. But we did something on my campus where we one of our book club books was Me and White Supremacy, and we actually had somebody who is not the usual presenter, a white male who was just coming into his own. He was reading the book, and he actually led the book discussion very bravely. He really took the initiative to do that and was very vulnerable in that space about what he was learning. And he really brought in a different audience. So that was so powerful, and something that really he volunteered to do himself, and we were so grateful for. So I see a couple of hands up. Go ahead. Yes.
So it's Ferrari, like Ferrari.
I
recognize the pause.
I was looking at that very closely. My name is Rania, so it's like, you can only imagine what I get with that. Go ahead.
So I have a question, and Nashona, that's fine. We'll get used to the sound. What if you have the fact that people can opt out is a privilege that people have, right? And people that are just tired of, there's the pandemic, then there's this other huge wave of discussion of equity and diversity, right? And the group of people that can opt out and say, you know what, I'm just tired. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Can we just talk about other things as professional development that's really looking at, so it's and there's a group of faculty that are, that have that luxury and that privilege, right? So it's like, how do you help them understand that this is important? And although there is exhaustion and I live with it. I'm Latina, so I live with it every day and have lived with it every day. So I can't opt out of it. But how do you help them understand that this is valuable and it will move the needle for a lot of students? Like if they can just hang in there and have those uncomfortable conversations and be vulnerable and be open and reflective. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely does. And I'm a little hesitant to get on because of the scratchiness, but workforce ESD, we work through everything. I think there's so many different ways to answer that, and thank you for the question. I think one of it too, and this goes back to kind of knowing your audience, is figuring out how to reframe things so that they finally hit and connect, right? So sometimes we go in with a little bit of generalized information, but when we know our audience, then we know what talking points to speak to bring people into the space to understand the importance of the work. And so I would say that that's one strategy that takes a while too. It's not, none of this work, happens really quickly, right? We can't turn it around as quickly as we'd like to. So it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of knowing your audience in order to come up with that thing that will bring them in. And it is a luxury and a privilege to say, no, not today. This is not my thing. But then when you bring it back to faculty members in particular about the importance of connecting with students and meeting them where they are as part of student success, then sometimes that is a way of engaging them. But I think it takes a few more intimate conversations and really getting to know those who are the naysayers or those who feel like they can tap out when it's convenient. I'm sure Janue and Rania probably have other things to share with that.
Yeah, sorry, I've been trying to comment on some of the things. I'm a little slow, but because I'm reading and then I'm trying to just comment on some of the great things that were placed in the document. But I definitely agree just with what I've seen in what is placed in here, that we all have a shared experience as the coordinators of professional learning, professional development, and a lot of things about, just the culture, the budget, allowing staff to participate, getting people to buy into it who aren't just the people who always go, right? So I feel like that's a really important thing. We were going to talk about equity and what does equity mean to you? So if you can, in that same document, if you scroll down a little further, there's another table where you can put your name and what equity means to you. And if you want to take, a minute, and then we'll just talk a little bit more about what it means to you, as well as why we need to embed it into the work that we're doing.
And then Janue, Susan also had a question. So we got to Marari, and then I didn't want to miss you, Susan. I saw that your hand was up earlier, so I didn't know if you wanted to go ahead and ask your question now while folks are writing on the Bitly document.
Oh, thank you. I think it was a question that was actually already asked about the response that we get from faculty members that equity-minded or anti-racist work is really just loading more onto their plate, and they already feel, maxed out. And so responding to that. And I just also wanted to say thank you for holding this session, because it's very validating, cathartic to hear, that we're not alone. So thank you.
I really think it's a universal problem. Janue, I'm sorry, I saw you unmute, but I really think it's a universal problem. And as a faculty member, I feel that even in my own curriculum, I feel like I'm being equitable, I'm being transparent, I'm really bringing in those culturally diverse stories in my example. But, part of being a faculty member, and I think it helps to hear it from other faculty, is that we constantly have to reevaluate what we're doing and constantly give our curriculum a critical eye. We know the faculty who teaches the same thing in laminated sheets from 20 years ago and never wants to change, but that's not the role of the faculty at the community college. And so I think, weaving that into your culture of what it means to be a faculty member and have continuous improvement, not just for the institution, but built into your own work, is a really important message to send, because then it just creates this loop and this cycle of critically evaluating your own curriculum. It's just so vital to what we do.
Yes, I wanted to just from a perspective of as a just the coordinator, I think that you have to incentivize it too, right? There's two things. I want to talk about equity, but before I do that, I want to just piggyback on what Rania was saying. So what I've also learned, there's a great researcher, her name is Dr. Gina Garcia. She's at the University of Pittsburgh. And she talked about HSI institutions, which I believe a lot of California community colleges may have that designation. And so when we want to create that space for them to redesign their courses, to make them more culturally responsive, they're oftentimes maybe required to take on the extra workload, right? But not necessarily have the support. And I believe, and what she would say in her research is that you have to pay them and incentivize it, right? So initially, I think that would be something that we should take funding to do, right? Because it would take upfront the designation, oh, I'm sorry, HSI, Hispanic Serving Institutions, I'm sorry. So yes, so what she, would say is that it should transition to some point where, it's just kind of a part of their own, growth and learning process, which is what Flex should serve, right? Flex should be the thing, but oftentimes we have to create these other things, right? To go along to support, and we can give them Flex, but if we incentivize it, at least at my campus, it can't get double credit. So I think one way is incentivizing it, supporting their work, supporting the investment by saying that you honor their ability to take the time to invest in building something new, but also from an institutional standpoint, what is the SLOs, the program review process? How can that be used as a starting point to identify what they need to learn so that it's tied to the program review process? So if you can articulate, okay, DEI is now State Chancellor's Office, it's in our institutional objectives, as well as program review. So then we provide support so that you can effectively meet the standard of what program review is asking based on this PD, so the purpose and the role of PD, right? So we know that DEI is something that we have to do, but how can we tie it to the goals of the State Chancellor's Office, our institutions, so on and so forth, right? To articulate that vision for them so that they understand the relevance and the value and the importance of it.
Janue, can I just plug one more thing?
Mm-hmm.
Long Beach City College, if someone is here from there, and if not, just a huge shout out to them. They created a cultural curriculum audit. It's a Canvas course that their equity coordinator, I believe, is running with a team of other people. So Long Beach City College did exactly what many colleges struggle with, right? They have people enrolling in this Canvas course. They take them through looking at their syllabi, looking at their curriculum. And it's such a great course. And I believe it's 4 weeks long. And they are willing to share a lot of that information. And they've shared some of that with my own college, but they're phenomenal to really have taken the steps to do that and have faculty critically evaluate their curriculum. So, okay, let's move on to the next slide.
So I just always like to just open up with what you all have shared. And Long Beach City Colleges did a phenomenal cultural curriculum audit. I believe they have a wonderful model. I think I put their resource on here, but as far as some of the things that were shared, being able to show up as our authentic selves, right? So we use the term diversity. This is from Christine to talk about people of color, and our diversity efforts should really be talking about how faculty and staff demographics don't reflect the realities of our community. Wow, that's so good what you wrote. Diversity should be a reality. And I won't read all of it, but it's really good. Every member of our institution, be the student, the staff or faculty, should reach their full potential by learning, be it in learning the material, delivering of the services designed to do. Wonderful, Luis. Britta, she said, making everyone feel welcome. Rebecca, to equity means meeting people where they are, being curious and open and giving the tools they need. And then it's approach to everything we do and every decision we make. Yes, everything is valuable. So I just like to also just know, because it starts with us, right? And how we frame our own experiences around understanding. But this is a definition from Dr. Harris, and Dr. Wood, who are at San Diego State, and you all may be familiar with them, but they said that it refers to a heightened focus on groups who are disproportionately impacted in order to remediate disparities in their experiences and outcomes. So they're researchers, so it sounds real. So in layman's terms, they're just saying disaggregating data information to understand what groups are not performing or persisting as well. And then why are those things happening? And then how do you support them? And so they identified some specific groups: students of color, former foster youth, food and housing insecurities, students with disabilities, formerly incarcerated, Pell Grant recipients. So those students, if you say have a class of 50, and then you disaggregate it by race or some other demographics, you might see how they're progressing towards other students who may have more advantages, right, and resources and support. And then how do we then offer those support services to them? Next slide.
Oh, can we just mention,
Okay.
We're in our presentation too, as a team, we talked about modeling things that you can do as you present DEI workshops. And so the reason we wanted to define equity is not because we think that anybody may not know the definition of equity in this room, but as you facilitate your own DEI workshops, you start with a baseline definition so that everyone in your workshop is coming to the table, maybe with different definitions, but then they see something, so you're all starting in the same place. Like I tell my students, language is relative. And so saying that I'm short in America works, but going to my home country of Egypt and saying I'm short is hilarious because all the women are either mostly my height or shorter. So language is such a relative concept. So it's good to start with a baseline. Okay, and next slide.
Thanks, Rania. That was a perfect explanation. So this is just also an additional resource. This is something that the 4 pillars of equity mindedness, according to Estella Ben Simone out of the USC Race and Equity Center. I believe she retired, but there's a book that she wrote with her colleagues. But one of the things, if you can see this, I won't read them all, but one of the things that I think we're experiencing is the systematic inequities, right, within our own institutions to be able to facilitate the types of things that we need to do, right? So we understand that we can have the training, but it can't change unless we have it connected to the institutional process, right? And then the only one other thing, because we were talking about ourselves and our experiences, one of the things she says at the end on the very last pillar is critically reflecting upon one's role and responsibilities. And it could be a variety, whatever your role is. And I like that because it also is connected to things that Bell Hooks wrote about and Paulo Freire, which is praxis, action, and it's a reflection and action to transform the world, right? So reflecting upon ourselves allows us to be the agent or the catalyst of change that we want to see by bringing insight forward, which is like, number one, we know our challenges. How can we collectively use all of this intellectual things that you've done, right? And how can we say, oh, I can use that, or I'm going to try this, or we learn together, right, through this public dialogue. And so I just wanted to just share that these are research-based, definitions that allow us to be able to frame the conversation around a shared understanding. So thanks for explaining that, Rania.
Okay, very good. Next slide. Nashona, is this you?
I think it's all of us.
Okay.
All the slides are all of us.
There
They're
we
just,
go.
they're just some things that, yeah. So I guess this kind of ties in the rest, and I know that we have only about 10 more minutes left, but the authentic training strategies, I think we've spoken to those with the previous slides, and just how we're showing up into the space and then creating space for folks to come with us. But as far as tips and tricks, I feel like this morning when Dr. Bull was speaking, the tips and tricks are really utilizing resources that are readily available for us to move forward. And so I feel like there are quite a few things in the Vision Resource Center, and it sounds like they're working on, creating other resources available for us. But I know that in our district, we try our best not to duplicate efforts that have already been done and done well. So for example, we use in our hiring training or search committee training, we use a lot of the Lasana Hotep work that was referenced this morning. I think it was during the time that Dr. Williams was speaking. And so I think that is a smart trick and it saves time. It's language that's being used at the state level that we can adopt at the local level. And so I would identify that as one of the tips and tricks to saving time and using language and information that is already used throughout the state.
Okay, so let's
I
skip
was just
ahead a
gonna
little
chat.
bit.
Sierra College, yes,
Yep.
is adapting on, yes. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I
Sorry.
was talk a little bit about this.
Yep, only because we have 9 more minutes.
okay.
I know we were going to
Okay.
have a share out, but let's go ahead and move ahead.
Oh, okay, so thank you, Flavia, for sharing that from the Resource Center. Okay, I'm gonna try to make this, I've kind of said this already, but I would say one of the things that I've had to do in my role, I learned on the job. So I don't have a perfect science to it, but one of the things that I learned to do was be able to work with my committees in terms of the professional learning committees. So we have a governing committee and we have a faculty professional learning committee and a classified professional learning committee. So I recognize that their vision was the most important. They were the stakeholders in that work. So we would talk about what their vision was. So I would just say one of the things that I would encourage you all to do is if you have a group in a community that you're working in, if you can ask what that vision is. And then the next thing would be, what are one or two institutional goals that are currently connected to equity at your campus? I know that some institutions may not have that, but if you do, what are they? And then how can you say, how is this goal aligned to either that program plan or the institutional plan? So once you identify if these goals within the institution are aligned with equity, and then you can go take it a step further and say, okay, so how can, if there's an equity baseline, right, that the institution wants us, the people to in the campus community to develop, then how can we frame the programming to facilitate meeting that goal based on what the institution has already identified as a priority? So that is one way to, I think, to just show the members in the community the value of them being able to invest in that type of PD work or PL work, right? Because oftentimes I think even with the faculty, it's hard for them to buy in because they have other work, they've been teaching a long time, they don't understand how to make the connection. But if it's in the program plan, if it's an institutional mission, then you can show them that it's connected to their daily work and that the investment that they make will then be a good return on allowing them to then answer and address how they've tackled, equity or DEI in their classroom or in student services, because they can see the alignment between the two. So that is just something that over time, and I can put in a collaborative document, but when we do program review, which all campuses do, right? It's a student services thing. It's also a faculty, instructional thing. So one of the things that the Academic Senate of California has is a document that talks about this alignment process. And so with that alignment process, that might mean you have to advocate as a PD coordinator. I did, with some administrators to have certain things put in program review so that it then was something that we could leverage to be able to build the PD work around equity and embed it into everything that we did. And so that's all I have to say. So that was just something I wanted to share. Hopefully in the fall conference, I'll have more time that we can interactively work through the questions and a process, kind of do an analysis together. But I hope that just helps to give you something to build off of, right, that you have available at your institutions already. And please feel free, if you want to email me, I'll put my email's on the document as well, and I'll put it in the chat.
And I want to concur that as we were planning this workshop, Janue did such an amazing job of really working with what's already institutionalized, like program reviews, like the student learning outcomes, and seeing how professional learning and DEI fits into that and creating that alignment. So she did a lot of work. And again, we hope to present at the October workshop of her process and how she did that. And something that I learned early on as a PD practitioner is that and I don't like the word silo, and we use it so much, but you can't be off in a silo doing PD work and just having your plan be separate from everything, and sending out your workshops without really fitting into the mission, vision, values, and all of the other institutional documents out there. You have to be integrated deeply into that work, because that really is the work of PD. And that's what validates the work that we're doing. So when people opt in or opt out, the closer we are embedded into the institutional goals, the more successful we'll be, and the more administration support we'll have, and just those linkages will happen so much more seamlessly. Okay, so 4 minutes for questions. I think we can. I'm muted. Don't you hate when that happens? 4 minutes for questions. And then we want to send you to lunch on time. So Janue, I know you're looking at the document. I don't know if there are any questions in there, but we're happy to take, oh, excuse me, as my phone rings. We're happy to take questions for 4 minutes. If anybody has anything or any comments or any feedback for us, we want to do an expanded workshop. We only had 45 minutes today, and we rushed through things a little bit, but we hope that this was valuable and that you felt supported in the space, and you felt a little bit of a connection with everyone else also struggling to do this work. And it's such valuable work. So any questions or comments, we're happy to take that for the next few minutes. And you can raise your hand. It's much easier to just have you unmute and speak to this. So go ahead. Okay, I don't see any hands up or questions in the chat. So hopefully this information was valuable to you. We'll send all of this out as well, along with the document. Thank you, Janue. I'll let you go ahead and wrap it up for us.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Rania and Nashona. I know that hopefully in person, we'll have some more time to just talk through it together and to share. And I hope that there was something that you could take away from it, as Rania said. And I just appreciate both of them, as well as the 4CSD board. And so I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the time in the conference. And again, please feel free to reach out to us if you just want to share something great you are doing, or if you even just want to ask any other questions. And so thank you so much.